colleagues, I'm so pleased to be here today to honor his extraordinary life and his contribution to human rights and freedom around the world. That is what Tom Lantos stood for, human rights and freedom all around the world. Now, many of you are aware of Tom and Annette's heroic journey to America through extraordinary adversity. Many of you understand that Tom's efforts on behalf of human rights and freedom and dignity around the world stem directly from his experience of life under a murderous regime. He witnessed firsthand the brutal assaults on the human spirit, and he understood the need to fearlessly battle those who seek to destroy it. Tom was first and foremost a patriot. And whenever he and I met with foreign leaders in the United States and abroad, his love of country was always evident. And all of you who are here, who are friends and family, you know that about Tom Lantos. And because he had suffered the consequences of weakness from that totalitarian regime, Tom was always an advocate of a strong national security policy. He was a consistent opponent of the Soviet Empire, where here many in the West were counseling accommodation. He never wavered in his conviction that the people of his native country, and indeed millions of others living under the communist regime, when the opportunity arose, would rise up and choose to throw off their chains. And he also knew the importance of those living in freedom to keep faith with those awaiting their day of liberation. And for that reason, he often lectured his colleagues and foreign officials alike on the need to recognize the central role of Ronald Reagan in ending the Cold War and in liberating the captive nations of the Soviet Empire. I often remarked to Tom that it was a testament to the greatness of America that two penniless refugees, one from Nazi Germany, one from communist rule, would someday find themselves serving as chairman and ranking member of a committee of Congress, helping to shape the foreign policy of our adopted and beloved country. And of that shared experience rested our commitment to ensuring that our country remained true to its founding principles and never cease to defend freedom, never cease to defend human rights for all of the oppressed people of the world. And I cannot convey my deep gratitude for having known a person of Tom's courage and stature for his many years of friendship. I, like all of you who knew him, we benefited enormously from his example of service, of dedication, of love of country. Therefore, it is my honor to be here at this wonderful event, this dedication, this presentation of his portrait that will hang here in honor of the lasting legacy that he has left for each and every one of us who value freedom and value human rights. Muchísimas gracias.
We're going to do this program with committee yield to the ranking Democrat in International Relations, who just came in. Please, Howard Berman. Please join me.
Just like the Congress to do this to us. Tom Lantos dedicated so much of his life to promoting freedom, justice, and democracy. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi stated that Tom, quote, devoted his public life to shining a bright light on the dark corners of oppression. He used his powerful voice to stir the consciousness of world leaders in the public life. As the only Holocaust survivor elected to the Congress, Tom spoke with a credibility and integrity that compelled attention and respect. As a Wallenberg Jew, he knew the responsibility we all bear to speak up for and protect our fellow creatures. He often said that every day since was a precious gift, and he lived as if he delighted with each new day. In public, he was often an imposing figure. His opening statements at committee hearings, both as ranking member and then as chairman, were eloquent and profound discourses on the great issues of our time. He was fearless, incapable of being intimidated, eager to be an epicenter of a just cause. He co-founded the Human Rights Caucus in 2006, which now appropriately bears his name. He spearheaded the effort in 2004 to label what was happening in Darfur a genocide, and at 78, hopped readily into a police wagon, handcuffed, during a protest at a Sudanese embassy. And he was deeply committed to the security of Israel and to deepening the bonds of friendship between Israel and the United States. When he perceived Israel had been unfairly slighted, he was amongst its fiercest defenders. Tom's love of America was unbounded. He himself said in his valedictory statement, "It is only in the United States that a penniless survivor of the Holocaust and a fighter in the anti-Nazi underground could have received an education, raised a family, and had the privilege of serving the last 3 decades of his life as a member of Congress. I will never be able to express fully my profoundly felt gratitude to this great country." My most tender recollection of Tom and my most vivid memory was being asked to come to his Capitol home in January 2008, shortly before he passed on. There, surrounded by most of his cherished and adored family, with Bob King, his trusted friend and sidekick, a truly serene Tom Lantos, frail but also larger than life, spoke softly but firmly of his condition, his faith, his love for Annette, his country, our institution, the committee, his staff, and of his biting desire for his priorities to remain our priorities. As we look upon his likeness here in the committee room over which he presided too briefly as chairman, let us all reflect upon the legacy he left us, the responsibility to carry his fight forward, and to delight in every day given us on earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Howard Berman. As you know, there are votes on, and some of the members who come up here may have to leave momentarily, but I just want to share some thoughts as someone who has, over the years, become a very close friend of the Lantos family and had the opportunity to draw very close to Tom through the last, what we came to learn later would be the last years of his life. Look at this gathering here. For a member of Congress who, in some ways, presence is still being felt here. It's really extraordinary. Tom Lantos had a depth and a reach that covered the globe. All over the world, people knew Tom Lantos and Annette as a couple who were fiercely dedicated to social justice and human rights, and who came at it from an authentic expression of what their own individual lives were about. It's not that they just adopted a cause, they embodied it. And Annette continues to embody it. This family, there's no other family like this in this country. And all of us who think in terms of family want to be like the Lantos family, want to be part of this family. That's why we're all here as one family, the diplomatic corps, our ambassador from the UK, and all of the members of Congress who will come here as the votes end. This Capitol Hill community, the staff, the friends of the family. This is, when we honor Tom Lantos, we honor our own ongoing commitment to making this a better world. So, for me, it is a blessing to be connected with the Lantos family. I would say Christensen for the Hungarians who understand what Tom Lantos meant to Hungary, and Shalom to those from Israel who understood that Tom Lantos was a driving force for not only Israel's security, but for peace in the world. There will never be anyone quite like him again. But those of us who had the good fortune of knowing him, of working with him, know that the legacy that will be reflected in this honor today is one that we have a responsibility to carry forward. So thank you, everyone. Let's celebrate Tom and his family this afternoon. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Katrina Lantos Sweat, and it is my pleasure and privilege on behalf of the extended Lantos family, and in line with what Congressman Kucinich so eloquently said, I think that pretty much includes everyone here. But I would like to formally welcome you to the unveiling of the official portrait of our father, our grandfather, and most importantly, our husband, and the former chair of this committee, Tom Lantos. It is truly thrilling and gratifying for us to see so many of my father's former friends and colleagues gathered here today for this special occasion. And we thank you for honoring him and honoring us by your presence. Now, as some of you know, I am the proud mother of 7 children and soon 2 grandchildren. So I know a thing or two about the joys and challenges of labor and delivery. But I must say that my vast experience did not fully prepare me for the long and sometimes arduous pregnancy that culminates today in the very, very happy unveiling of a beautiful baby that you will soon see. It is not an easy thing with brush and paint and a little bit of canvas to capture something true and important about another human being, particularly when, as my dear mother was so fond of reminding me, and I quote, "It is someone as wise and brilliant and strong and handsome as your father." What can I say? She's right. It is not easy to capture such a thing. But I hope that you will agree with me that this wonderful portrait that we will unveil today has met the challenge well. There are a few people I would like to single out and acknowledge and thank for their efforts in making this happen. First and foremost, my nephew, Levi Tilleman Dick, who not only had a very special bond with his grandfather, but who undertook the nearly impossible task of acting as the family's representative and interface with the artist through a long and winding process. Levi did so with such skill, sensitivity, and diplomacy that I have sort of taken to calling him Mr. Ambassador. Thank you, Levi. Secondly, I would like, yes, we should clap for that. Secondly, I would like to thank my husband, Dick Sweat, who used to actually be called Ambassador once upon a time, for lending his expertise and his eyes at critical junctures in this process. Dick, at one time in his life, thought of becoming an artist himself until he happened, I don't know, to his detriment or to his benefit, to bump into a semi-exotic Hungarian woman who lured him into politics instead. But he very often intervened at just that moment with a perception about a little change that seemed inconsequential, but was enormously critical to capturing the essence of the man whom he knew not only as his father-in-law, but also as a Congress. And finally, of course, I want to acknowledge and thank the gifted artist, Laurel Sternbeck, who brought this work of art into being. With equal and epic measures of skill and patience, Laurel was unfailingly gracious, sensitive, open-hearted, as we, the family, metaphorically peered over her shoulders during this project. And I hope you will join me in thanking her. Finally, a word about the painting itself. And I know you've gotten a sneak preview. It won't be the same impact as seeing the painting in full. But a number of people have commented about the wonderful and some say somewhat enigmatic expression on my father's face. In fact, one friend went so far as to say that Dad's portrait will become incredibly famous as the Mona Lisa of the United States Congress. And they thought, there's a little echo of that famous Mona Lisa. But where some see a hint of mystery in Dad's smile, I see something else. I see the steady, reassuring optimism of a man who endured much, but in the end, triumphed over all his adversities. In the words of Rudyard Kipling, he could meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same. When I look at this painting, I can hear my father saying, as I struggled with some challenge or other in my life, "Don't worry, darling. We are just bending a windy corner of history. Everything will be peaceful and bright up ahead." I hope for each of you, when you happen to find yourselves in this elegant and august chamber, that you will remember to glance up at Dad, meet his clear and confident gaze, and feel the same sense of optimism and reassurance that he radiated to each member of his family. Thank you. I would now like, if I may, to call upon our illustrious guest and dear friend, Senator John Kerry, Chairman John Kerry, to come and say a few remarks. And I hope you'll bear with us as the program hops about a bit due to the voting schedule. Senator Kerry.
I apologize for being a little late. We had Congressman Lavrov was over visiting with us, and he was reminiscing about Tom and his last visit. He remembered well that Tom had promised him that in X number of months, Jackson Avenue would be done. Struggle, but he really remembered him well and responded to him. What a pleasure to be able to join everybody here in sharing a few thoughts about this remarkable man. Thank you for introducing me and allowing me to be here. I think I've said many times since Tom's passing that on the issues of human rights, decency, freedom, all of the things that matter so much to Tom. I said that Tom would indeed be watching over us for a long time to come. I didn't have the portrait of Tom, but he will indeed be literally watching over us. And a lot of us have had occasion to think hard about the kinds of things that Tom fought for, particularly with the opening of the Institute, the official opening of its doors in Budapest. Recognizing that Eastern Europe has made extraordinary progress over the last 20 years. But on the other hand, the work of democracy, as Tom will always remind us, is never done. And so understanding that, Harry Reid and Dick Lugar and I offered a resolution really to underscore Tom's lifelong promotion of human rights and expressing a sense of support for the Institute's mission. The Lantos Institute is not the first entity to honor Tom Lantos' legacy. A little over a year ago, the Lantos Anti-Semitism Holocaust Denial Archives opened in conjunction with the Middle East Media Research Institute. And that important project institutionalized Tom's conviction that you can never stop fighting anti-Semitism. That hate expressed in words can much too easily become hate expressed in action. And that indelibly learned lesson in the case of his life, unique one, reminded him, as no one else in the United States Congress, about the fragility of might judge the fragility, obviously, of democracy. I think Tom's favorite phrase was sort of the veneer of civilization is very thin. And I'm confident that he would be unbelievably excited to be here today to see the way in which one individual's spirit moved a whole region, to prove that the veneer of autocracy is also very, very thin. And he would be stunned by what is happening today in terms of people's efforts to achieve their civil rights and human rights and fight for freedom. One thing Tom reminded us is that that this work is never finished. Because despite even the best efforts of somebody as powerful as his intellect and conscience was, and they were powerful indeed, as powerful as that was, one person just doesn't have the ability to achieve it all, perhaps in one lifetime. And even if they did, you have to have the guardians who are there to prevent the relapses so obvious. Whether it's the Hutu on the radio, or a Nazi pamphleteer, or any of the other things that we've seen in so many different countries today, this struggle is perhaps been more real. I think you can hear me, but that's all right. Thank you very much. I think that this struggle really is as important today as it's ever been. And that's probably the greatest meaning of all in the celebration of this portrait that hang here reminding us about this remarkable person. It's a reminder constantly of how special one member of Congress can be, how they can impact not just their fellow members of Congress, but have a profound impact on people in countries far and wide, and most importantly, on the dispossessed, the disenfranchised, on the struggling, those whose rights are so challenged. Tom was their unparalleled champion. This work is a reminder to all of us that the work goes on. And I would be proud to do my part together with our colleagues to try to live up to his legacy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is this on? All right. I don't know, given the voting schedule, whether any of our other distinguished speakers or members are here right now. I don't believe I see any of them. And so what we would like to do next is share with you the video presentation that was shown at the inauguration 2 weeks ago of the Tom Lantos Institute in Budapest, the institute that Senator Kerry referred to. There will be two brief remarks said at the very beginning by my mother and at the very end by my nephew, Michael Tilleman, in Hungarian, but I assure you the rest is in English. And it's a beautiful telling of the purposes of the institute and my father's life story. So we'll show that now.
Imádta Magyarországot. He was a natural leader, and boys all looked to him for leadership, both in mischief and in good things.
I was put into a forced labor camp in a place north of Budapest, which had an important railroad bridge. I escaped from that labor camp and I joined the Hungarian underground.
That was 1947. And at that time, it really looked like Budapest would be a place where, we could really make our home. We loved Hungary. We loved Hungary. We all loved Hungary. We all wanted to go back there. And he was hoping, to get a good education abroad, and he was planning to come back next summer. And then, of course, in 1948, the communists clamped down on Hungary, and that was the end, of any hope of ever getting back there. He convinced the president of the University of Washington to offer a language course in Hungarian. And so the University of Washington, I think, became one of the few major universities in America to offer introductory Hungarian, intermediate Hungarian, and advanced Hungarian among its language offerings, all of which were filled, of course, with girls from the sororities who flocked, of course, to Tom's class, because he was always so handsome and charismatic. In spite of all the terrible things that happened to us, Tom loved Hungary with a passion. And he was just waiting for the moment that he could go back there and he could take his children back there and share that Hungarian heritage with them.
I was very fortunate growing up to spend a lot of time with my grandfather. I spent a lot of time with him in Washington. I spent a lot of time with him in his congressional district, and we traveled all over the world together. But I never saw him more in his element. I never saw Tom Lantos being Tom Lantos more than when we were in Hungary together. The sky was bluer, the music was sweeter, the food tasted better, everything was better for him when we were in Hungary.
I love my native country and my native language and literature and music and culture.
To Hungary compelled so much of the work that he did in Congress, worked to address some of the challenges that persisted in Hungary, both during the Cold War and after, and worked to build a relationship between the United States and Hungary.
And for those of us of a different generation, he represented a link to the past, and a link to connect in some way with our roots. And he instilled in many of us, along with other members of our community, a sense of commitment and of service.
I know I speak for all of my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats, in expressing our outrage at the most recent terror. Central focus of my life, obviously, is human rights. Because I am convinced that this is really the path of a more civilized world.
His message always was that it doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter which God you worship. It doesn't matter what ethnic group you are a part of. Our commitment to human rights, our commitment to these principles is motivated by our core humanity. It is something that unites each of us regardless of what flag we pledge allegiance to and regardless of what experiences we have had in our lives.
It will teach, hopefully, future generations why discrimination is a bad thing, why human rights and the rights of minorities are very important values. in the society. And this will be a true tribute to Congressman Tom Lantos. A nagy hatalmerében nagy örömmel köszöntök mindenkit Lantos Intézet megnyitásán Budapesten.
My father and my nephew singing slightly ribald Hungarian songs, which will not be translated for your benefit. You know, if you glance at your program, you'll see a number of members of the leadership are scheduled to speak, and they have been calling and texting us saying that they are at the White House right now trying to work on that little issue called the debt ceiling, but they want to join us. And so what I'd like to do is move forward with our program and hope you'll have the flexibility to roll with us as we roll their schedules. And so we're going to mix it up just a little bit. I would now like to ask my mother, Mrs. Annette Lantos, to come forward. She has some remarks she would like to share. And then we will do... Oh, is that... All right, I think my mother would like to first do the great reveal, as they say on all those reality shows. And so with great excitement and anticipation, we will now unveil the portrait, and then my mother will address us.
Not well.
Not working.
I'm really very grateful to share this occasion with so many of you who remember Tom, even though it's very hard for me. Hope I can do this. But I would like to ask you to consider for a few moments the portrait of my beloved husband, which we have just unveiled for you in the Foreign Affairs Committee. The man looking out at us is a bit softer than what I remember Tom, a little less tough. Over the shoulder is the portrait of Raoul Wallenberg, the Swedish hero who saved us and many other Hungarians from the mass genocide of the Holocaust. On Tom's lap is Gigi, one of the many little pound puppies he loved and who loved us in return unconditionally. In that little frame is a picture of me because Tom and I were a team. As Tom contemplates us, I believe he's content with what he has come to represent around the world. Tom has become a symbol of someone who overcame tremendous adversity, who achieved the American dream, and who worked to share freedom, human rights, and compassion for all, including the animals, with the world. Tom's commitment was to advance the cause of human rights, peace, unity, and prosperity for all. He loved serving in Congress. He loved the opportunity it gave him to serve the people of California's 11th Congressional District, a home he chose when he could no longer return to his native land and home that he loved passionately. He loved the opportunity Congress gave him to raise his eloquent voice on behalf of those whose voices might be lost, as was ours during the Holocaust. He loved that through his congressional office he could let their needs be understood around the world and responded to. He hopes now, I imagine, to witness from his position here the serious efforts to advance genuine democracy and freedom, peace and unity in the world. He wants us all to work together to help those efforts to succeed. I imagine Tom wants to see all forms of hatred, division, and violence dissolved here among us on earth. I have just returned from Hungary, where along with two great ladies, whom Tom deeply loved and admired, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, he participated in the opening of the Lantos Institute for Human Rights and Justice, an organization established there to push forward the cause of human rights and to encourage young democracies as they are evolving towards healthy and constructive goals. As the Hungarian Prime Minister and the leader of Hungarian opposition party both spoke about these overarching goals, Hungary experienced a healing moment of harmony and unity, which was always Tom's effort in all of his endeavors to bring about. I imagine that our battles here on earth, in Congress, in the Middle East, or Africa, or Tibet, no longer make Tom angry. He probably shakes his head and wishes us to correct our course when we wander into paths of contention and division. He probably wishes us to do the hard work of self-examination as individuals and communities and nations that can prepare the way for true reconciliation and peace. It is my hope that periodically those that work here will glance up at Tom, that they will remember him, remember what he had to endure as a victim of fascism and communism, and remember his efforts to work as an American in a bipartisan way to make the world a better place for all of us. Next month I will be in San Francisco for the opening of the Tom and Annette Lantos Center for Compassion for Animals, and I'm so grateful to be part of that message as well. In conclusion, I want to repeat the story with which Tom was so fond of concluding all of his speeches. It is the rabbi's story. A revered rabbi called his students together and asked them this question: how can you tell the moment when the night has turned to day? One student responded, is it when a man walking through the woods can distinguish between a wolf and a dog coming towards him? The rabbi shook his head and said, no. Another student answered, is it when a man walking through the village can distinguish the roof of his house from that of his neighbor? Again, the rabbi shook his head and said no. Then the rabbi spoke and said, the moment when night has turned to day is when a man walking down the street sees a stranger approaching and recognizes in him the face of his brother. And this, I believe, is Tom's message and legacy to all of us. Thank you.
any of you had any doubt, I think you now understand why my father was able to do all that he did, and how my mother was such an integral part of that. This is not on the program, but I see one of my father's dearest friends when he was in Congress and closest colleagues, and he did not know that I was going to call on him today, although he's hovering there.
I'll speak up here and just say, I'm in awe of the man. I don't know if I want him to be my father-in-law. I definitely wouldn't want to be a witness. But I'll tell you this, you would want to have him be your member of Congress.
May I ask, and I apologize because the crowd is so big, but if any of those who are scheduled on the program are here, I'd be so grateful if you'd raise your hand at this time. But if not, if they are still voting, I would like to now ask another former colleague and dear and close friend and family member of my father's, my husband, Ambassador Dick Sweat, to come up and say a few words.
I don't know which microphone I should use, so maybe I will not use one. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I look out on this crowd and I am so filled with admiration and joy because I see many, many faces that are all dear friends and almost members of the Lantos family. If you don't know each other, all of you, by the end of this evening you should, and it'll be a great addition to your repertoire of friends. Tom had a way of bringing people together that I think is being celebrated here this evening. And I had an opportunity to think about what to say, and I wanted to keep my remarks concise and to the point. And the thought that came to my mind was, well, maybe I should talk about Tom as a mentor. Yes, I'm a son-in-law. Yes, being a son-in-law to Tom Lantos was not easy. But we won't go into those details, except for one. Because I want to tell you about a conversation that I had with Tom when he was 49 years old. And this was when I first met him. And he was a little younger than I am today, so I can feel where he is, or he was at that time in his life, and having this sort of brash, probably immature and somewhat forward young man approach him and have a conversation. I was talking to him about, not directly, I was practicing, I didn't realize at the time, but I was actually practicing my diplomatic skills. Because I was very curious why this man was so intent on guiding the careers of his daughters to such an extreme. You see, I came from a New England family that was fairly tacit, fairly stoic, fairly hands-off with regard to telling kids what to do with their lives. That was not the case in the Lantos family. He was very engaged in giving direction to his daughters and all members, close and distant, to give them of his opinion what they should do. So I was trying to ask him, why is it that he was behaving this way? I was trying to understand this quality in him. And when he said to me, and I'm not going to quote directly, but it was almost as I'm saying, he said, essentially, my life, my career is set. It is over. I am going to dedicate my time to my children and then my grandchildren. And I remember thinking at that time how sad it is that someone at the age of 50 could think that this is a stopping point of growth in his own career and be focusing now on the next generation. Now, I'm not sure that my interpretation was correct, but that's what I was thinking. Now, I have to tell you that his wife and his two daughters were very, very instrumental in getting him to recognize the opportunity of running for Congress, of setting aside his ambition for his daughters and taking that responsibility on himself. And if it had not been for those three women, one in particular, but the other two as well. Tom Lantos would not have been a member of Congress. The Human Rights Caucus would not have been created. The Lantos Foundation and Tom Lantos Institute not created. And we would not be celebrating what was truly a great leader and something that needs to be continued as important work here in this world. So I start out by telling you this story because Annette was right. When you look at this picture at the beginning of his congressional career, I don't think this picture would have looked as it looks today. But he took that course, he took that good advice, and he stepped forward and he ran for Congress. And he has accomplished great things that we have heard about. Now, I have two other very brief stories I want to share with you. One has to do with the time that I decided to run for Congress. And what is interesting about that is being from New England, from the state of New Hampshire, which at that time was a very Republican place, the first people that I turned to for advice on whether I should run were my own parents. And I remember my wife and my parents went out to dinner, and I sort of popped the question. I said, well, what do you think if I were to run for Congress? And both parents immediately looked back at me and they said, what, as a Republican? Now, I was a Democrat, and I still am, so that was not exactly the greatest show of enthusiastic support that I was looking for. But when I sat down with Tom, and I asked him the same question, and looked for his advice, his response was, that's a great idea. Let's start making the plan for the campaign immediately. And that's the kind of man he was. Whether you were his son-in-law, whether you were his wife or daughter, whether you were his grandchildren, or as I know many of you in this room can recount from your own experiences with him, he was a mentor who took the time to listen to your ideas and to help you shape them into what hopefully would become a great course of action for you in your life. You have to remember, he was a professor from the university before he got into Congress. And he always was a professor. And that quality in him was one that I will never forget. My father passed away when I was just coming out of Congress, and Tom stepped right in, and he became the father figure in my life that I was lacking because of my father's departure. I think he has done that for many of us, and I think that what he has been able to do in being that mentor, in being that professor, in being that knowledgeable and wise person, to give us all a sense of direction, to think about what we should be doing not only in relation to our own lives, but in the lives of other people, whether it's the lives of those who are struggling under totalitarian regimes, or to those in the lives of people who are suffering the injustice of human rights abuse. Tom was always there as a member as an important part of our consciences to help us to remember that it is not only our own lives that we should worry about, it is the lives of many others that are important and that should be paid attention to. Over the years, he transformed from that person who felt that his career was over, that he was dedicating his life to the next generation, into one who understood what he could accomplish. But as he did that, he became a gentler, a sweeter, a kinder, a more tolerant, a more patient person. And he is one example of a human being that as I grow older, I hope I can emulate. Because I can remember one of the stories that was told earlier, I think Howard Berman was mentioning, how he came and visited him in 2008, a few months before Tom passed away. Those last 3 months of his life were an amazing example to me of someone who was at peace with himself, who could reach out to his friends and assure them that their life's work was still important, that they had to continue to carry on that fight. And to do that in a way that made them feel good not only about the work that they were doing, but about the loss that everyone was very much aware of at the time. And that loss was that Tom was dying. That is a quality, I think, that is very difficult for people to capture and to communicate to their friends. And I feel so lucky to have seen that. But I also feel very lucky that we have this picture of him as he looks with his favorite pet in his lap, the photograph of his love of his life on the desk behind him, and the image of the man who saved his life through the Holocaust of the Second World War. That is the man that I will always remember. And I think we can appreciate those good qualities that he taught us all as we remember those very things about him that changed our lives as well. So I am grateful that we have all had the opportunity to share the mentorship of Tom Lantos. And I am grateful that we have his image in the Foreign Affairs Committee to remind us from now on forever. Thank you.